everybody, I'm Renee and welcome to Tatertown. Today on Tatertown we are not going to talk about animals, for the most part. We are going to make sauerkraut. Now, why would you want to make sauerkraut? Well, first of all, it's super easy. It takes 2 ingredients, cabbage and salt. And if you like sauerkraut as much as I like sauerkraut, there is nothing better than making your sauerkraut at home, because it is chock full of probiotics and nutrients that you won't find in the store-bought variety because of how they have to treat it or process it to be shelf stable. So today, the reason why I am making sauerkraut today is, even though I've lived in Tennessee for a long time, I am originally from Pennsylvania, so my New Year's Day meal tradition involves lots of sauerkraut, Pennsylvania Dutch. And I have 1 jar that I made about a month ago, and I'm probably going to use all of that, so I'm going to go ahead and get another jar started today, so I have that later on down the road. The only things you really need to have are a mason jar that you have sterilized in boiling water for, about 10 minutes. Super easy to do. And depending on the amount of cabbage you have to make sauerkraut, you could use a pint or a quart jar. You will need some sort of device lid that allows the gases to escape, but also prevents dust and air from getting in. I have an airlock lid here, which is what I prefer, but you can also use one of these little silicone lids. It's got a little hole in the center, which burps the gases. And I typically use these for fermenting my chicken feed, although I'm using bigger jars now, so these don't fit in them. And this is a sauerkraut pounder. They make them in stainless steel. You can get them in wood. I have both wood and stainless steel. I just like the stainless steel because it's super easy to clean, but the wood ones are absolutely fine. The last thing you're gonna want is salt. And it is really important to make sure that the salt you use does not have iodine in it. So you don't want to use regular table salt, iodized table salt. Some of the kosher salts have iodine in it. So make sure you use a sea salt or some sort of salt, pickling salt that doesn't have iodine in it. And here's why. Iodine tends to darken the vegetables or whatever, the foods that you're fermenting. That's okay. It's more of an aesthetic thing. It's not gonna hurt it. But what it does do is it inhibits the growth of beneficial bacteria, and that's really what you want when you're fermenting food, so don't use iodine or salt with iodine in it. And the last thing that you're gonna wanna have is some sort of weight to keep the cabbage from floating to the top. They make these fermentation weights, which are just heavy pieces of glass. You could use another jar that fits inside the glass. It doesn't really matter. And also, as far as the lids are concerned, if you don't have anything like this and you don't want to order anything, you can use like a piece of cheesecloth. Just make sure that it's breathable. It's gonna let the gases out, but it's not gonna let any oxygen in or dust in. That's really what you wanna be careful. All right, so let's get started. Now, the first thing I'm gonna do is remove the outer leaves of the cabbage. And after I remove the outer layer, I'll remove a small leaf so I can lay it over the top of the cabbage in the jar to help keep all the small particles submerged in the brine. I then cut off the bottom and quarter the cabbage. Once it's quartered, you'll want to remove the core of the cabbage, which is the really hard part in the center where the stem attaches. Since I have chickens, this is great because I usually feed these scraps to them or to the mealworms I'm raising for the chickens. Now at this point, you can shred the cabbage by hand with your knife, or you can take the easy way out, which is what I do, and use the slicing blade on a food processor. It saves a bunch of time and hassle for me, but the goal is to end up with long shreds of cabbage. Now here, I get a little overenthusiastic and dumped all the cabbage into my bowl, which I did not want to do. So I'm gonna go ahead and scoop it back out so I can do what I originally wanted to do, which is layer the cabbage and salt in the bowl. Now for this amount of cabbage, I'm using 2 tablespoons of non-iodized salt. There's a bunch of variations on how much salt you should use, but I typically use 2 teaspoons per pound of cabbage. Once I'm finished layering in the salt, I'm gonna cover the mixing bowl and let it sit for about 30 minutes. I do this so the salt does its magic on its own and I don't have to massage it by hand for the recommended 10 minutes, because believe me, doing that is hard on your hands and wrists. After it sits, the cabbage is much more wilted and I massage it for about 5 minutes to get all the juice squeezed out of it. This juice is your brine. After it's ready, you're gonna fill your mason jar with the cabbage. As you go, you're gonna wanna pound it down so all the cabbage is packed and pieces won't float to the top. It's super important to keep all the cabbage under the liquid. If not, those pieces that float could mold. And be sure not to overfill the jar. You wanna keep the cabbage about 3 inches from the top. Once all the cabbage is in, pour the remainder of the liquid into the jar. Just be sure not to fill it all the way to the top, as it will expand and seep out all over the place. Ask me how I know. If you need more liquid, you can add some plain water to top it off. Now, once I've pounded it down one last time, I'm gonna grab that small piece of cabbage and place it over the top to help keep all the little pieces from floating up. It's just extra insurance. And here are my fermentation weights that I use. They come in sizes for wide mouth and regular mouth jars. And all you're gonna do is put it on top to keep the cabbage below the brine. It's all ready now, and I can put on the lid. This is the airlock lid I use for fermenting. I really like this style of lid because it keeps out oxygen and dust while allowing the gases to escape. The top part of the lid chamber is filled halfway with water, and that's basically all you do. The last thing I'm gonna do is write the date on it because I can never, ever remember when I started something. Now I'm gonna let this sit. Really, you can leave it ferment. I think you need to at least let it ferment, I would say for a week, several days to a week. And then you can start taste testing it. You can stop it when you found the taste you like, but I usually let this sit for 3 to 4 weeks, and that's perfect for me. For the first 3 days, what you're gonna wanna do is, at least once a day, is take off the lid and push down on the weight. If the jar is about to overflow, you can remove some of the liquid, but make sure the cabbage is always submerged under a couple inches of the brine. And that's basically it. After about 30 days, you will have something that looks like this. And once it's fermented to how you like the taste of it, just pop it in the fridge and it'll last, 3 to 6 months, depending on your refrigerator settings. Now, I forgot to mention, I just use salt and cabbage because I don't like really any other flavors, but you could add caraway seeds or other flavor options, whatever you like. All right, well, that was super quick and easy, if not a little messy, but no fun if you're not making a little mess. But I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you have any questions or if you have any comments about how you make your sauerkraut, please let me know in the comments below. And thank you for taking the time to watch this video, and I hope you have a great day.
Do you think we'll win like some kind of YouTube award?
Yeah, I think so.
Good.
Tater Town rules.